The stench hit us first, a synthetic, chemical assault on the senses that had no business being here. It wasn't a faint, laundry day whiff, it was a punishing, acrid reek that made your eyes water and your throat constrict. My partner, Leo, dropped his tackle box with a clang, the sound echoing a panicked alarm across the still water. What in the hell? We'd been coming to this spot for years, a little tucked-away corner of the community lake, our personal haven. We knew the sun-bleached dock planks, the way the bass would nibble at the surface in the evening, the peaceful rustle of the cattails. This wasn't peaceful. This was an act of pure, unadulterated malice. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frenzied drumbeat. 100 feet away, standing on her pristine lawn, was Margaret Sterlinger, infamous HOA president. She held a garden hose limply in one hand, but her gaze wasn't on the wilting petunias she was pretending to water. Her eyes were fixed on us, a thin, triumphant smile painted across her lips. It was a predator's smile, all teeth and zero warmth. She'd done this. The bleach bottle, half shattered on the shore, was a testament to her cruelty. Are you kidding me? Leo's voice was a shaky whisper. He pointed a trembling finger at the bottle. That's bleach. She poured bleach in the water. My blood ran cold. The thought of all the fish, the frogs, the tiny little ecosystem we cherished dying, suffocating in a chemical haze because of one woman's petty crusade. The rage that bubbled up inside me was a hot, scalding pressure. We had complained about her before, about the endless, nitpicky violations she'd send out, the unmowed lawn for 2 days, the paint color of our front door being a shade too dark. But this wasn't a violation. This was a crime. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. Margaret, I yelled, my voice cracking slightly. She just continued to stare, that maddening, superior smile plastered on her face. What did you do? She finally spoke, her voice saccharine sweet and dripping with condescension. Oh, darling, I just got rid of the unsightly growth on the shore. It's for the good of the community, you see. Keeps the area looking tidy. She emphasized the last word with a theatrical flick of her wrist, a final insult delivered with practiced grace. Tidy? I spat back, the word tasting like bile. You just poisoned the water. You've killed everything in it. She laughed, a sharp, brittle sound like breaking glass. Oh, please, it's a tiny bit. The rain will wash it all away. Don't be so dramatic. The confrontation that followed was a blur of righteous anger on our part and smug dismissal on hers. We threatened to call the police, to report her to the board, to expose her for the monster she was. She simply shrugged, as if our threats were as inconsequential as the dead fish that would soon float to the surface. She seemed utterly convinced that her position, her wealth, and her iron-fisted control over the HOA would protect her. And for a moment, looking at her, I almost believed her. This wasn't just about a fishing spot anymore. This was a battle for our home, our sanity, and our sense of justice. It was a deeply personal affront. She had invaded our peace, poisoned our refuge, and done it with a smile. I knew, with a chilling certainty, that this would not stand. Days passed in a haze of phone calls and dead ends. The police said it was a civil matter. The HOA board, comprised of Margaret's hand-picked sycophants, said they'd look into it. But their tone was dismissive. I could hear Margaret's laughter in the silence on the other end of the line. She was winning. My frustration simmered, a slow burn that threatened to consume me. But then, Leo, bless his heart, remembered something. He'd been talking to an elderly neighbor, old Mr. Hemlock, a retired engineer with a knack for tinkering and a memory like a steel trap. Mr. Hemlock had told Leo that the lake wasn't a natural formation. It was an old quarry, you know, he'd said, filled in back in the 70s. The developers had a hard time with the soil. Something about a high mineral content. Had to bring in some specialist to cap it all off. Made it sound like they were burying treasure or something. It was a throwaway comment, a bit of local history. But it clicked for me. Capping. What did that mean? I spent the next few days in the dusty archives of the county library, digging through old town plans and engineering reports. My hands, stained with the gray grime of old paper, shook with a new kind of nervous energy. What I found was a revelation. The quarry had been filled in, yes, but not before a local company had used it as a dumping ground for something called stabilized industrial waste. The soil was indeed a nightmare of heavy metals and other toxins. The solution, the capping Mr. Hemlock mentioned, was a special, non-porous clay layer designed to seal off the toxic waste from the water above. It was a fragile barrier, and its integrity was the only thing preventing a major environmental catastrophe. And the permits were contingent on the lake remaining a non-potable, recreational body of water only, with a specific clause that any use of chemicals, no matter how small, could compromise the cap's integrity. A cold, hard plan began to form in my mind, a quiet storm building behind my eyes. This wasn't about revenge anymore. This was about public safety. And Margaret had just handed me the weapon. I called an anonymous tip line for the state's Department of Environmental Protection DEP. My voice, disguised by a mix of fear and urgency, described a recent, accidental spill of household chemicals into the community lake. The voice on the other end was professional and calm, but the alarm bells were ringing. They asked about the nature of the lake, its history, its composition. I provided all the details I'd uncovered, mentioning the quarry and the old, forgotten permit. A low whistle came from the other side of the phone. They took the information seriously. The confrontation that followed was nothing short of cinematic. It wasn't just me and Leo against Margaret anymore. A week later, a full-fledged DEP team arrived. They were in hazmat suits, their faces grim, their equipment intimidating. They sectioned off the part of the lake where Margaret had poured the bleach, and a small, quiet crowd of neighbors, drawn by the spectacle, gathered to watch. Leo and I stood at the edge, a mix of apprehension and grim satisfaction churning inside me. Margaret emerged from her house, her face a mask of furious indignation. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, her voice an imperious shriek. "I am the HOA president. You can't just cordon off the lake." A woman in a crisp DEP uniform, her expression unreadable, stepped forward. "Ma'am, we're here to investigate a potential environmental hazard. We have reason to believe that the integrity of the containment cap may have been compromised." She held up a small, sealed vial of water. Initial tests showed traces of a caustic agent, and with the history of this site, that's an immediate red flag. Margaret's face went white. The color drained from her cheeks, leaving her looking old and sallow. "A caustic agent," she stammered, her bravado finally crumbling. "But it was just a little bleach, to clean up the algae. We'll need to run more comprehensive tests," the officer continued, her voice still calm and professional. "But in the meantime, per the original 1974 permit, we are required to issue an immediate public health and safety shutdown order. The lake is to be closed to all recreational use, indefinitely." A gasp rippled through the crowd of neighbors. The lake, the centerpiece of the entire community, the reason many of them had moved here, was being shut down, indefinitely. Margaret finally understood the magnitude of her actions. She looked at us, her eyes wide with terror and disbelief. The smug smile was gone, replaced by a ghastly, silent scream. The air crackled with her silent implosion. The whispers of the neighbors became a chorus of quiet outrage. "It was her. I saw her standing there a few days ago. She did this just for some algae?" The whispers were Margaret's personal hell, a public reckoning she had never anticipated. Her reign of terror was over. The crown of the HOA was a worthless trinket now. In the end, she didn't just lose her lake privileges. The investigation, once opened, unearthed decades of her shady dealings. The HOA funds she'd siphoned for her beautification projects. The selective enforcement of rules to punish her enemies. Her world, built on a foundation of control and fear, came crashing down. The lake remained closed, a silent, beautiful tomb to her petty cruelty. It was a victory, but it was a quiet one, a Pyrrhic one. We had our revenge, but we also lost our fishing spot, our little haven of peace. So, here's my question to you, to anyone reading this. We got our justice, we took her down, but in doing so, we sacrificed something a lot of people loved, a community resource. Was it worth it? Was our vengeance, however sweet, the right thing to do? Or was it just another form of destruction? Where do you draw the line between right and wrong when someone else has already crossed it?